Still bopping away to the little do 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 do.
You do that as well, because I just, and then when it goes lower, I just go like, oh.
Yeah. Anyway, hello Gabby, hello everybody. Welcome to episode 15 of Parkrunpedia. I'm Hannah Perrin, and I've got the hang of the pointing now.
I still haven't got the hang of that, is it?
Is
I'm Gaby and Hannah.
Wonderful Professor Parkrun Gaby and Hannah, and very beautifully demonstrating German efficiency with her beautifully folded headband, where I've just managed to kind of scrunch mine up.
Yeah, but yours looks more rakish. I like it.
Oh yes,
like
definitely going for rakish.
I do like it. I do like it a lot. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I
retain the hair.
Yeah. And I mean, today is very special for us, isn't it? Because we're kind of like offering a kind of like a relief from with me now withdrawal symptoms. Right?
No, yes, it's the end of the live season. So Danny and various other members of the With Me Now crew, obviously, but Danny in particular has done a sterling job going live every day during lockdown 2. And I know people have really appreciated the work he's been doing. And that also means that this is our last Parkrunpedia of this season. So we're going to make it.
I mean, it'll be so awesome. It'll be so awesome. It'll be no time at all before we're going to be back, right?
Well, we do have a new country to persuade you to put on your wish list for parkrun tourism this week. We are heading to the USA for the first time, and we're heading to Texas to Terry Hershey Parkrun in Houston, Texas. I'm not going to attempt the accent because I'm hopeless at accents and people will laugh at me. So if we do have people watching from Houston, I think it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon there. I think they're 6 hours behind us. So any Texans watching,
it could be lunchtime. We could be lunchtime.
About lunchtime, yes, having a little break there. Yeah, they did. Terry Hershey Parkrun did share it on their Facebook page, the link to us. So we'll see. We'll try and keep an eye on the comments to see if any Americans actually pop up.
Who's going to make the obvious joke? Who's going to make the obvious joke? Are we going to have a problem?
I think somebody should. Do we have a problem? Houston, we have a problem.
Bingo.
Okay, so let's have a quick geography lesson and see where we actually are in the world. So there we are in the sort of bottom left-hand corner of the USA. There is a lovely little yellow marker showing us where exactly, there's Texas, and not only in the bottom right-hand corner of the country, but also of Texas state. So we'll just zoom in and you can see Houston coming into view. And there on sort of the western part of Houston, you can see there's Interstate 10 and see the little blue squiggly line there. That is Terry Hershey Parkrun. Now you can see it follows that kind of squiggly line that looks like it carries on for quite some way, and we'll have a bit of a chat about what that route actually is in a bit. So yes, there it is. It's a one lap out and back. So you start at the yellow marker, you run along the wiggly bit, and then you run back along the wiggly bit. And by the looks of it, it's quite a sort of an urban park. It looks like it's surrounded by sort of settlement and roads and buildings and that kind of thing. I got a bit confused when I was looking for some good pictures to share, because one of the pictures on the Terry Hershey Facebook page was of some people in their parkrun t-shirts standing in front of like massive great skyscrapers, and I was like, wow, American parkruns are really different to the ones over here. And then realised that no, that was actually some of their parkrunners that had gone and done a half marathon. I think it was somewhere else. It's like, oh, okay, maybe it's not quite as urban as that, but it does look rather lovely.
It looks amazing, doesn't it? Some of the photos we've looked at have just been stunning. So I mean, should we just come with a health warning so that if a parkrun features, you will want to go?
Yeah, that's pretty much standard, isn't it? So just a quick look at the stats as well. So Terry Hershey Parkrun started at the beginning of last year. So they're a relatively new parkrun, a relatively small one at 65 average attendance, and pretty speedy judging by the records. So we can have a look at the terrain and some of the surroundings as well, as we usually do. But one thing I did want to share just to start with is this. When I was doing a bit of research, really made me laugh, because I usually just check just to see if that week's parkrun has a Twitter feed. Terry Hershey doesn't, but it was mentioned in a Twitter. Now look at this. This really made me laugh. I don't know how well you can. I'll just zoom in a little bit so you can read it a little bit more. But this guy, Andy Macken, said, "Oh, I think Houston needs a parkrun." And this guy took 2 years and replied and went, "Ta-da! Now we've got one." And I love the fact that there were 2 years between the, hey, this would be a good idea, and then ta-da!
Well, actually, there's a reason why it actually took a little bit longer than they'd planned. Because one of the reasons for the timing of Terry Hershey Parkrun was that Houston had been devastated by Hurricane Harvey, I think it was.
Yes.
So the kind of like parkrun route is obviously close to water. We'll come to that sort of like in a bit. And when sort of Hurricane Harvey hit, they flooded 30 feet above their normal level. And the entire kind of like area was just devastated.
30 feet? Wow,
30 feet, which is massive, exactly. Yeah. And kind of when the parkrun kind of like returned, or when the parkrun actually kind of like got first set up, because they tried it a little bit earlier. The parkrun was one of those initiatives which really sort of signaled the recovery of Houston from that environmental disaster.
That's so cool.
So the parkrun's really important, I think, for that.
Absolutely. That sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? Parkrun signaling the return of things. Let's just have a little look at a couple of pictures from the parkrun. So as always, I like a multicolored bunch of parkrun. So here we go. Look at that gorgeous blue sky. And Terry Hershey again is one of those ones that has a variable start time depending on the time of year as well, presumably because of the temperatures in Houston over the summer. They start at 7:30 in the morning, and I generally say, like, I'm an avid parkrunner, absolutely adore parkrun, wouldn't miss it for the world. But I do sometimes question just how dedicated I would be to parkrun if I had to drag myself out of bed for 7:30 on a Saturday morning.
But then imagine Park 5 kind of morphs into a little bit of a siesta. Then you kind of like wake up. It could just be awesome.
It would be very much more breakfasty than 11.
Sort of brunchy, really, and then you go for a food afterwards. I think it could be awesome, actually.
I think that it would be. I'm sure I'd still be there. And obviously, you have to have a parkrun dog. And I picked out this one because look at this little dog doing a pose, face to camera. Love this little dog. So.
He's got, there's a photographer, race face.
I know, it's proper, it's like me doing any kind of running event. Oh, there's a photographer, quick, look, perky and enthusiastic rather than
how many
sweaty.
More miles? Is it over here? Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
So there we go, just to give us a little sort of flavour of what Terry Hershey Parkrun looks like. Now, Gabby, I'm sure you've found out all kinds of exciting things to tell us about the area, the parkrun, the person. Is there Hershey chocolate involved at any point? No, there isn't. I mean, I've spent a week. I've really tried. I absolutely kind of like tried to find a chocolate connection. But the thing is, the kind of like founder of Hershey Chocolate, there was a man kind of called Mr. Hershey. He died without children, and all his money went into a foundation, and he set up this model village called kind of like Hersey, and that's where the factory is kind of like based. So Hershey is basically kind of like the chocolate's a brand name. Yeah, but no more people.
Well, there are kind of like people, but they're not really the family, and they don't have any chocolate money. So it's just, it was a bit of disappointment, really.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, no excuse for chocolate then.
There's always excuse for chocolate, but of course, I mean, the kind of like the Terry Hershey person herself, I may have to confess to a bit of a girl crush will come to a number of reasons.
Okay.
But you've forgotten to ask me about connections.
Oh yes. Oh yes, I do. I did. Okay.
Yeah. Which one do you want first? The tenuous one or the one that could actually be a real connection?
Let's have the tenuous one first. Come on. What links Terry Hershey with last week?
Remember going to Castlewellan in kind of like Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2017, Castlewellan was holding the 50th Castlewellan Agricultural Society annual show. So big kind of like event.
Okay. Yeah.
Winner of category 16, which is the yearling non-thoroughbred colt or gelding foaled in 2016, was a horsey named Houston.
That is my favourite tenuous link ever.
It's tenuous. I had to work very hard on that. So
wow.
So there we go.
How on earth?
Lots and lots of searching.
Powers of research. I am astounded. Wow, I don't think you could top that with a genuine non-tenuous link.
The genuine non-tenuous link is actually really boring because, as we know from last week, the kind of linen industry, specifically the bleached kind of like linen industry in Castlewellan, which was specifically kind of in the hands of the Merland family, while they exported 200,000 pieces of cloth annually to America, and one of the ports they've imported into was Houston. So that's just kind of like a rock solid connection, but it just doesn't.
Yeah, but it's not half as fun.
No.
Oh no, I'll stick with the horse winning the agricultural show class. I love that.
Good boy. That's all I can say with regards to Houston. Because when you needed him most, he was actually kind of like there. But I suppose we should explore Houston a little bit. I should explain how we're going to arrive at my sort of like girl crush. So should we dive straight in and actually have a look at the map?
Yeah, definitely. So let's have a look.
So what we're looking at there is just one of our favorite objects. It's kind of like a map, and I think it's just a reminder to us of how young Houston as a kind of city actually is, because in 1836 Houston was bought as a plot of land by a couple of land developers, and a few years later there was half a dozen people living there. So from these tiny beginnings, what we've got now is it's set on Wikipedia. It's the 6th largest metropolis in the US. Yeah. From like half a dozen people who sort of rocked up in 30s.
Bless the America. They do love a grid pattern, don't they? Look at that.
So it's just so organised with everything sort of laid out. And it's quite relevant to our sort of Terry Hershey parkrun, because what kind of made Houston so attractive is the location, and its particular its location at the confluence of a number of rivers. Right. And the most important of these rivers is called the Buffalo Bayou.
That's a great name for a river.
It's just kind of like, it basically sort of acts as drainage. So all the water from the sort of like lands around it kind of like flows into the Buffalo Bayou, and it sort of like chucks it back out into the land. So it's got a very, very sort of low-lying sort of floodplain, which both makes it massively fertile. So you can grow sugar and you can grow cotton and all the kind of like good stuff there, but it also makes it massively liable for flooding. So throughout its entire history, Houston's had a little bit of an issue with regards to trying to control the environment, but in such a way that it doesn't destroy it. So it's one of the most environmentally aware places in the US. And I was really kind of like struck by that, actually.
Cool.
So important for Houston, because if you muck around, especially with the Buffalo Bayou, too much, you're just going to destroy the entire kind of like city. You can sort of see how low-lying it is, and there's
it looks incredibly sort of flat with the rivers along the bottom there.
Amazing sort of place. So the kind of like original sort of conception of Houston was as this trading port. And then it just attracted more and more infrastructure with regards to transport. And that's where it's quite interesting to look at our sort of second exhibit, image kind of like B.
Okay, exhibit
It has to be kind of like about. So this one is actually called Missions Operations Control Room 2, MOCR2. And that's the space in Houston from which all of the Apollo missions were actually kind of like run. And this is a screenshot from Apollo 13. So it's not the movie, it's actually the shot,
the actual mission,
which they used to kind of reconstruct the movie round. And I loved all the kind of stuff about this because this particular room is now a designated National Historic Landmark. So it's been sort of kept in its Apollo days technology and kind of fashion.
Preserved.
And it's been preserved because obviously NASA has like a space center in kind of like Houston anyway. So they've just shifted the control stations elsewhere because the significance of Houston is that Houston kind of like controls all of the American human space program interactions. So they're actually monitoring the International Space Station as well. So
very cool.
It's quite a transport hub, actually. So we're kind of like going beyond the world.
That's extreme transport, isn't it? I'm intrigued by what they're holding there. It's like a box, like a little sort of square, like a tissue box with a kind of a hose coming off it.
Have you seen the film?
Yes. Is this them experimenting with trying to fix
It's the filter. It's the filter. It's the oxygen. It's the oxygen filter they had to kind of like build.
The actual one.
And that's the kind of like thing they had to build on Apollo 13 to kind of like scrub the air so they weren't going to die of kind of CO2 kind of like poisoning.
Oh, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Apollo 13, the film yet.
I didn't even think about that. So,
I think it's old enough now that we don't need to do we don't need to worry too much.
So Houston's all about the environment, but I think what we really need to talk about is actually Terry Hershey, and specifically who Terry Hershey actually is. And as I said, big kind of like girl crush coming up. So I've read lots and lots of stuff about her. All you need to know about Terry Hershey is this quote. She was described as a woman who always wanted people to do the right thing, and she never hesitated to tell them what the right thing is.
Oh, excellent.
That's my kind of woman.
Oh, she sounds great.
So she's an interesting character. So the kind of like park which has been created couldn't actually be more aptly named, because I just think this is like a parkrun sort of like story in sort of like microcosm. It's like a sort of capsule story. Okay. So Terry Hershey, whose name is actually Terry Talton Hershey, so she married a guy called kind of like Jacob Hershey, was kind of comparatively sort of like affluent and spent lots of time in the early 60s kind of like yachting about with her husband. And she settled kind of close to where the kind of Terry Hershey Park is now in kind of Houston, which is important for the Buffalo Bayou. And this kind of like river is very slow draining and kind of like comes from the sort of like uplands and goes through Houston and drains into the kind of like sea. And it's just forever been trying, the government has forever tried to control the Buffalo Bayou because of the big sort of like drainage area. So in the 1950s, a couple of reservoirs were built to the kind of like north of the city. And then at some point in the 1960s, bits of the Buffalo Bayou started to be straightened. There didn't seem to be any public consultation or any kind of like permission that been issued for this. And Terry Hershey kind of came across sections of the Buffalo Bayou which were actually being concreted. Can you imagine the environmental damage that will cause? Slow draining river, kind of you create kind of concreted channels. So it was already starting to devastate the upper reaches of the Buffalo Bayou. And she went on an environmental campaign rampage in the kind of like late 1960s and kind of prevented a massive environmental disaster by mobilizing loads and loads of people. So she got a little bit of a grip on the situation when she enrolled one of the most unlikely allies ever. So there was a newly elected congressman to Houston in the late 1960s, who sort of came off of an oil magnate background and went on to become a very significant political man in the history of the United States.
It's one of the presidents, but the 60s is slightly before my time.
Didn't become a president until much more recently.
Oh.
So George W. Bush, the elder.
Oh, Texas, of course.
Texas oil magnate. He became kind of Terry Hershey's ally, and actually through kind of like Terry Hershey allying herself with kind of like George W. Bush, he kind of like put through the legislation that actually prevented the concretization and the channelization of the Buffalo Bayou, which created spaces, one of which is now kind of like occupied by the Terry Hershey parkrun.
Ah,
isn't that amazing?
That's so cool.
So she's a really, really, really sort of important campaigner. I think we've got a picture of her somewhere, don't we?
We do, yes.
Because she has a glint about her where you can see why sort of like people describe her as a little bit of a sort of force of nature. So she dedicated kind of her entire life first to kind of like environmental issues, especially focused on the Buffalo Bayou and the kind of preservation of this. And then she actually went one step further. She said, it's all very well, you know, having spaces, but if there's no people in the spaces, you're going to have a real problem. So what she founded next was an association called the Park People, a group which is dedicated to parks and open spaces in Houston, because she spoke very sort of like eloquently about a deficit in Houston with regards to open spaces. So that grid plan we looked at right at the beginning, well, it was all about houses and transport. It wasn't about open spaces, communal spaces, community, kind of like spaces that can be shared by different kind of like communities. So she founded the Park People to address that dearth.
I want to be a park person.
So I don't think we've come across a more appropriate person to actually be the person after whom a parkrun is named. Because I mean, if you're thinking of parks as a space where kind of the community thrives, where you bring the community together, if the park is conceived as something that preserves the kind of like character and the environment of a specific place, then well, she's the kind of like godmother of the environmental movement in Houston.
Wow.
So that's where the girl crush comes from. I just couldn't kind of like stop reading about her.
I get that.
Awesome.
She sounds like a fairly amazing lady. Yeah, we've got some good, great comments over. Yes.
What a wise woman.
What a wise woman. Doesn't she seem like a wise woman? Yes, I think that about sums it up. She does look like a lady full of goodness, doesn't she?
So she got elected as the first woman onto the Texas Rangers Association, whatever the kind of like precise name was, and she was hated on that commission because she had a massive anti-hunting agenda. So again, she just went, that's it, stop kind of like killing animals. We want to preserve the environment. Wow. So I mean, what a woman, right?
Yeah, what a cool person. Yeah, amazing that she then had a park named after her that then had a park run in it that was then kind of also obviously then named after her.
So I thought
she's very appropriate. I think anybody who goes and does Terry Hershey Parkrun becomes a park person.
A park people.
The park people. I love that.
Part of the park people. I want a sort of t-shirt now with sort of park people on it.
Park people. Wow, what an amazing story.
And in a way, I think that kind of ethos seems to inform the Terry Hershey Parkrun as well, because I was sort of reading on the sort of Parkrun America blog about how they became the 28th location in the US, really kind of like nice write-up. And there's just something at the end along the lines of, you know, kind of the cafe makes sure it's absolutely open for the park runners, the cafe stores all their equipment. And I was just thinking, my heart's all full and warm. This is exactly the kind of place I would like to go.
Oh, doesn't that just give you the warm fuzzies? It's what we talk about every week, isn't it? It's community, it's open spaces, it's environment and fresh air and people, and that pretty much sums it up, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't think we need to say anything else about Terry Hershey Parkrun, because it's just Parkrun in a tin, I think.
Yes, absolutely. What a perfect one to finish the parkrunpedia season on.
Thank you for a random location generator, right?
I know, yes. The random picker did well last week. Okay. Do we have quiz time?
Of course we have quiz time.
Okay. Let's see if we can finish on a high here. I'll put my finger on my buzzer and do my best.
Why am I doing the dancey thing? I need to stop this. I have the countdown music in my head. Yeah. So question one was,
Okay.
who was Terry Hershey's ally in preventing environmental disaster in Houston in the 60s?
Was George Bush Sr.
Yeah. Not somebody I'd have expected to be an environmental. Yep, exactly.
No, yeah.
Yeah. Name one of the space programs that's located in Houston.
Oh, the Apollo program.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And what's the name of that river we've been talking about? The one with the fabulous name, which just sort of like sounds like somebody should make a song about it.
I bet somebody has. The Buffalo Bio. Bio.
3 out of 3, obviously.
Yay!
And I mean, the bonus question was, what's the name? What's the name of Castle Welland's 2017 winner of the yearling non-thoroughbred colt foaled in 2016 category?
Oh, other than the awesomeness of Terry Hershey herself, that is my favourite thing this evening. The horse was called Houston.
Yeah, and I would love to know how Houston is doing. See,
that is fantastic.
4 out of 4. So you didn't just get everything right. You actually got the bonus question right as well.
Oh, I'll take that to finish the season on. Okay, so that's it for this season of Parkrunpedia. I have to say a massive thanks to Gaby for all the hard work that she puts into researching our random parkrun location every week. She's done a terrific job in persuading not only me, but I'm sure a lot of viewers as well, to add all of our parkrun locations to their wish lists for where we want to go when we can. So thank you very, very much, Gaby, for all your hard work and for the enthusiasm that you bring to sharing it with us.
Well, Hannah, thank you very much. It wouldn't be the same without you.
Oh, thank you, sweetheart. And obviously all our lovely viewers who come and watch every week and pop lovely comments in the comment box. So thank you very much to Stuart and to Elizabeth Shazam, to Karen, regular commenters and very positive comments. So thank you very much to everybody for joining us on our journeys around the world. So until next time, good night from Gaby and I.
Bye everybody. And thank you.